Hey friends, my name is Ray Hughart, and I am the CXO and co-owner of the Teach Better team. This is the official kickoff of a big monthly series that we are very, very excited to officially be bringing to the full Teach Better network beginning tonight and then continuing once a month. We are going to have incredible opportunities to come together and share about a 15 to 20-minute live session on some strategic strategies to help you be better. And while I know we love to go live all the time, and our mindset is always to come live and share actionable steps, this live series is brought to you by an incredible grant opportunity, Remote edX, taking place in the state of Ohio, thanks to 16 ESCs that decided to come together and write almost $1 million grant to support educators in the state of Ohio. We have been doing this project for over 9 months in an effort to continue to connect these educators with one another and also update them statewide on what we are doing to support the incredible teachers across this state. They asked for some extra support. So we are doing this incredible live series. And when we thought about extending this live series to them, we thought it might be extra special if we filmed it live so that all of you in our network could also share in the benefit. So whether you are accessing this live because you just caught the live stream that's going to occur once a month, or maybe you are part of this incredible Remote edX grant thanks to those 16 ESCs across the state of Ohio, and this ended up in your inbox, we are excited to bring you some actionable strategies. Tonight is all about student ownership. So we are going to take a quick break here to highlight this incredible program even further and see how you, maybe not located in the state of Ohio, might want to get involved or learn a little bit more. And then we'll be right back with 3 different strategies on how we can be better in the area of student ownership. Hey friends, my name is Ray Hughart, and I'm so excited to bring you this month's quick tips thanks to the Remote edX project, where 16 ESCs have come together to write an incredible grant to partner with the Teach Better team to continue to elevate the work that educators are doing and continue to have us all come together and be a little bit better today than we were yesterday and a little bit better tomorrow than we were today. If you are catching this live, feel free to share this out on whatever social media you are watching on. We are going to go over student ownership techniques. We know that sometimes this can be helpful for any type of educator that may not be catching this. So feel free to share so it can reach a wider audience. If you're a part of this incredible Remote edX grant and you are catching this because it arrived in your inbox, don't forget to also mention to your colleagues or your friends and family that may also benefit from this video. Maybe there's a key takeaway that resonates with you that you want to make sure they share. Feel free to share this video as well. You can have access to this for the rest of eternity over in the Teach Better Team YouTube channel. So you will not lose access even if you've already watched it once. For those of you who may not know me, my name, like I've said twice already, is Ray Hughart. I love being a part of the Teach Better team. And when it comes to a quick tip concept, something I really love to do training on is how we can all be better at taking taking educators away from the front of the classroom and moving us into the true role educators have studied to be, this facilitator of knowledge, right? Rather than being the content delivery system to our students, we actually have such a stronger and more important role by stepping out of that front of the room position and actually facilitating the work being done in the classrooms, elevating our students' depth of knowledge on a concept by asking deeper, more personalized questions. And we can only do that if we free up our time. So while I would love to dive into so many different things, because I could talk for hours and hours on so many of the concepts that go into this work, I thought student ownership would be a really cool place to start. Student ownership is something that educators constantly ask me how we can be better in. And more often than not, educators tell me that student ownership is actually a reason that they can't do something in their classroom because their classroom is lacking students taking ownership over their learning. So as we go into our strategies, I'd love this to be a reflective opportunity. If you are live with us right now, you're more than welcome to add your thoughts in the comments if that's something you're interested in. Or you can just sit back and consume, do some reflection, and you're always welcome to reach out to me personally, either via email or social media. I'd love to discuss this concept even further if you have any interest in doing that as well. But my first tip when it comes to student ownership is to do some reflection on if you are providing opportunities for students to take on student ownership. It's really interesting to me. I get to do a lot of training in a lot of different concepts. And more often than not, like I said earlier, I lean towards facilitating professional development that really challenges our teachers to step away from that content delivery system. And a lot of teachers struggle really giving up that how do I call it? That ability to control everything. They struggle with that because they're worried that when they step out of being the leader of the classroom, at least the leader in terms of being in the front of the room, that the students won't rise to the challenge, right? They won't take ownership over the learning themselves. And so many of them don't take this shift where they maybe take on a different role because they have this fear that their students won't be able or are incapable of taking ownership over the learning that they have in front of them. My first challenge would be that we cannot ask students to do something that we don't give them the opportunity to do. So as we think through student ownership, I would really challenge you to be reflective of if you offer this type of opportunity first and foremost, because you can't have any sort of coaching, right? You can't give students feedback on how they are owning their experience and a learning experience if you're not giving them the opportunity to either be successful or find it to be an area of growth. And I say that knowing like find it to be a failure. So as you think through student ownership, why this concept may be interesting to you, why you've chosen to view this video of looking at strategies, I'd love for you to be reflective on if this is something you're even offering yet and why or why not you may not be offering it. What's the hurdle? The second element of this, I think, is kind of silly, but I think it's a really important conversation to have as you're reflecting on your students taking on ownership, more ownership of your classroom, more ownership of their learning experience, more ownership of their school building, is really identifying what that concept looks like. When I say student ownership, I have a very vivid picture in my brain. And when I say student ownership, I really mean students taking ownership of their own learning in a classroom space. And I can kind of paint a picture for you of what this can look like. I want students to find hurdles. I want students to persevere through hurdles. I want students to find a concern and then go to others and seek support. Or better yet, I want students to thrive, but see concerns arising in other students' learning experiences and choose to be a part of being of that solution, right? I want students to really see the full classroom as not just a place to consume, but a place to engage and interact and a place where they have a voice in that experience. And so as you are reflective of wanting to see student ownership occur more in your classroom, I think the first step in this is really identifying what that perfect end goal looks like. Very similar to how we lesson plan, right? You start with that end result, that standard that you're trying to meet. And then from that standard, you identify how you're going to get there, right? What are the targets that you need to have students meet? What are the questions you want to ask students to understand if they've met that target? You kind of use that backwards design. And as you do that, you begin to scaffold how your students are going to progress from wherever they are currently all the way to that perfect endpoint where they've met the expectation you're looking for. I think behaviorally has the same structure that we can utilize. So if you're looking at wanting to create student ownership opportunities, wanting to see student ownership in your classroom or in your day-to-day role, the first step is knowing how that looks. What does that look like? What are you comfortable with? And then give yourself the freedom to have this evolve. We all know that we can't necessarily have a vision and have it be one step to get there. We know there are going to be like all these small little goals, all these small little steps to reach there. Or sometimes if there's not, you might be aiming a little short, right? But as you get started, knowing where you're heading is really, really, I think, the first step to getting there. So as we think through creating stronger student ownership in your classroom, the first thing I would love for you to do either tonight or maybe later this week, but for sure within the next 5 days, I'm giving you a little timeline. I want you to paint a picture for yourself, and maybe only for your eyes, of what student ownership looks like, what it could look like in your classroom, because that will allow us to work our way backwards. Now, as we're being reflective on student ownership, I know we have some comments, so I want to address those. The last thing that I want to make sure that I fit in here, since I know this is going to be a quick live for us together, is my third suggestion for the student ownership concepts. And as I'm looking at my notes here, it really has to do with reflection. Student ownership is an evolving process. It's not learned once and then mastered, but something that your students will learn and reflect on and then grow and be better in, just like anything else that we're learning. And I want to encourage you that if you are currently doing anything to foster stronger student ownership in your classroom, or if you're looking to navigate your way to lean more towards a classroom that has a lot of student ownership in it, you need to ensure that you have some sort of way to facilitate that reflection. Now, I think you can do this in a few different ways, but two of my favorites come from something that some of you might already be trained on. We do it in the grid method quite frequently because the grid method allows our students to take on student ownership through so many different ways. But two key things, whether using the grid or not, has to do with monitoring our progress, monitoring students' ownership success, and then also that reflective concept. So while we're monitoring, are we also reflecting? Easy ways could do this can look a lot of different ways depending on how your classroom looks. Monitoring it should be both by the teacher and by the student. If you as the teacher are monitoring your student's success with student ownership, but they are not, there's going to be a disconnect. Whereas if the students are monitoring their progress through taking ownership of learning, but you're not, there's also a disconnect. So finding some way, I know some of you use a tracking page to do this, finding some way where the teacher and student are communicating about how they're monitoring that process is a really, really, really good first step. On the flip side, don't just monitor, but what does that actually give you? What data is that actually giving you, and how are we being reflective on it? A really easy way to have students reflect on their ownership could be a daily reflection that they do, not only on how they're doing in class, but how they're feeling about class work, how, depending on how your classroom's set up, they could be setting goals for themselves. This could be done, I would suggest, at the very, very, very end of your learning session. So if you're in class periods, kind of like a middle school or high school, this could be like the last 3 minutes of class while you guys are packing up. If you're in an elementary setting, it could be when you transition from one subject to the other, or right before some sort of transition that happens before a special experience that you might have planned in your day. But something that allows the students to say, okay, I did something today. Let's identify what I did. How did it feel to do whatever I was working on? And then how can I improve in some way? Now, if you're doing the grid method, those two concepts seems very familiar because mastery learning already allows you to facilitate a classroom where students take on student ownership experiences. And it also allows you to have the supports to ensure it's successful by these like tracking and monitoring systems and by this reflection and goal setting. But regardless of what system you're using in teaching, there's still very, very important techniques to help your students be more successful and for you to reteach and provide feedback when and if they're not going well. So as you think about student ownership, I want to get to some of these questions, and I also want to make sure that I keep this video short because I promised all of you that these monthly quick tips that you're going to see our team do every single month, sponsored by the Remote edX grant, are going to be short and sweet little tidbits that you can think of that will hopefully help you improve your week. But as you are thinking through student ownership, we went over three things. One is really painting a clear picture of what student ownership in your classroom actually looks like. The second is making sure that you are using some sort of monitoring and reflective tool to help you be successful anytime you're having students take more ownership in their learning. And the third was actually challenging you to say, hey, you can't actually expect student ownership unless we give students the opportunity to actually try it. So are you doing that or not? And the hope would be that during that third concept, that reflection of, do I have a concern over student ownership? Are my students capable of it? It would be hopefully some sort of comfort to say, well, actually, I don't know if they're capable of it because I've never given them the experience to try. I've never given them the experience to be successful or unsuccessful. So as we think about the concepts that we teach our students, you never try something once and expect it to be perfect. So hopefully these three things allow you to reflect a little bit on your practices. We have a comment here that says, I noticed that teachers that teach littles do offer this, but maybe middle school teachers are not, reflecting on why. I have to tell you, I have the opportunity to work with educators K-12 and even through higher ed, even in pre-K. I feel like I need a new way to describe the type of educators I get to work with. And I see a lot of concepts lean more towards certain grade levels depending on the topic, right? Like I see interdisciplinary work being really, really prevalent in elementary school settings, not always as prevalent in high school settings. Or student reflection and goal setting, I see happen actually more at the high school level than I see at the elementary school level. But I have to tell you, none of those concepts are consistent the whole way through. I will tell you that there's always an exception to the rule. And I think it really has to do with the teacher's interest level, the teacher's experience, not only trying these concepts, but the teacher's experience as a learner themselves. And I would encourage each and every one of you, regardless of where you teach, regardless of what topic you teach, having students take ownership over their learning is a very progressive idea that shouldn't be progressive. This should be the norm in our classrooms. And depending on what your goals are as an educator right now, maybe you set a goal to learn about concepts specifically so you can be a learner yourself. I would encourage you to take on student ownership techniques as something to challenge yourself with, because it really is allowing our students to see beyond the content and really grow the whole child in those essential skills that we not only want them to understand the information before them, but we also want them to be problem solvers. We also want them to be good society members, and we want them to really grow as full beings as they are within our classrooms and beyond. So I think student ownership is something that I've not only seen successful across all grade levels, but definitely something that I would challenge you to be a part of the solution and seeing more frequently in our classrooms. So I just shared a bunch of stuff, and we are almost at that 20-minute mark. So I'm going to tell you that I appreciate you, and I hope this was in some way helpful for you to reflect on your experience with student ownership. I want to give a big shout out to the 16 ESCs in the state of Ohio that are making the remote edX grant a possibility for so many school districts across the state. If you yourself are interested in not only these quick tips, make sure you catch those every month, but also if you're interested in exploring how grant funding can be your way of earning some professional development opportunities in your school or your community, please feel free to reach out, and you can head over to teachbetter.com/grants to see how we can partner with you to make all that fun happen. I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday, as we are streaming Sunday, October 23rd for this live stream. And I will give you a reminder that the Teach Better team goes live quite frequently. And we are actually even doing a panel tonight to talk about new staff retention and development. So if you're interested in continuing your learning, even beyond this small little short topic we did today, I would encourage you to follow the Teach Better team on whatever social media platform you're interested in, including YouTube, to make sure you don't miss any of the fun. I will be live here in just about 40 minutes again to facilitate an incredible panel with Brad Hughes over in our private Facebook group to discuss that new staff development and retention concept. But for those of you who are not joining us for that, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful Sunday, and we will see you all sometime soon.